In this episode, we're talking about how you can become an influential podcast. Podcasts are about storytelling and information. But how do we actually become an influential podcast? Not just a podcast people will listen to, but a podcast that actually helps shape the decisions of our listeners. Well, I'll tell you today, so stay tuned. In this episode, we're going to talk about your singular focus. We'll talk about 2 key actions that separate the pros from the passers-by and how you can become an influence, not a nuisance. As a podcast host, your singular focus is to create a gathering place for your people. All of the different people associated with your niche. You want to create a space where they all want to come together and hang out. And we do this by providing value, by telling great stories, by being relatable, by also being the attractive character, the leader of the movement, the guide for your people at the top of the mountain. We want to shine a light on processes that work. We also want to create a space where our people can feel vulnerable and recognize that sometimes our process isn't that easy, that sometimes there are struggles. And a lot of great communities and a lot of great podcasts come together when we're talking about something that is difficult, something that people struggle with. That actually brings people closer together. So as a podcast host, it can be very easy to be distracted and to try to think of all these different things that should be on your show. Oh, there's a whole checklist. I have to have guests, and I have to have sponsors, and I have to have cool segments, and I need to have all of these different ideas. But in reality, what you need to be doing is focusing on your singular focus, and that is providing value for your people, creating that space that they're going to come and gather, being dependable and reliable in that way. And the way that you do that is by planning each episode mindfully. You want to make sure that you're using the right keywords, that you're using topics that are important, that you're connecting with the guests who are going to actually be able to serve your audience where they are, both live and evergreen. This can feel really overwhelming, but it's absolutely necessary if you want to be visible, if you want to connect with your people, and if you want your podcast to become influential. If you want to know more tips about becoming influential, all you have to do is click the subscribe button and join us here on the channel. Every week we have new videos for you, helping you build up your influence, your authority, and ultimately your income online. The 2 key actions that separate the pros from the passers-by are planning and preparation. I know, I used to host a slew of different podcasts over the years, and the ones that didn't plan ahead of time, we just kind of thought we could wing it, were the ones that didn't get the most following. They didn't have that influence with our listeners. They sometimes didn't even have listeners because we weren't planning or preparing our content in the right way. So when you understand who your dream listener is, if you understand what their objections and what their hurdles are in the moment, and then you start creating content that's going to serve them in that space that they are, you're going to start seeing a big difference. So let's look at this in terms of having guests on your show. A lot of clients come to me thinking that is the single thing they need to do in order to connect with the right next audience for them. But in reality, there's a lot more to it. So here's some of the tricks that you need to know behind the scenes when it comes to planning and preparing for guests on your show. First, before you even go pick your guests on your show, you need to plan for those guests. So you need to come up with a list of all of the potential guests, even the ones that there's no way you could ever get a hold of. I want you to write all of those guests down on a list. That is first. Second, I want you to figure out which of those guests you can easily get a hold of. Ones who you can simply send a message to and hear back from. Those I want you to circle. Then I want you to highlight anyone on that list who you can get to through a connection of yours. Maybe you have a business partner or a friend or a client or a connection in a coaching group to another influencer who you'd like to connect with on your show. I want you to highlight all of those. And then anyone who would be outside of those 2 degrees of reach, I want you to just leave those aside for now. Now I want you to create a plan in order to approach those guests. There's going to be a different way that you approach the people who you have that intimate relationship with. You can just send a direct message, you can send an email, you have that connection already. And there's going to be a different way that you approach those who are 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees away from you. So I want you to prepare everything that you would need in order to tell your guests about your show. Show them previous episodes, have suggested titles or topics that you'd like to discuss. Suggest ways that their products and their offers and their expertise can be highlighted on your show as well, and you can introduce them to your audience. You want to prepare all of that information ahead of time before you even approach them, so that when you do approach them, it's a much easier process to get them on board for your show. That planning and preparation, not to mention what we do after we have them on our shows and how we continue to nurture that relationship so that it blossoms into even more potential later on down the road. All of that is important, but it cannot be successful unless you've done your planning and preparation ahead of time. So if you have other planning and preparation suggestions, ways that you engage with people, maybe ways that you gather great guests for your show, your podcast, your live stream, whatever it is that gets you visible, how do you prepare for guests? Let us know down in the comments below. The easiest way to become a nuisance as a podcast is to start talking about you, the host. It's to stop talking about the solutions you actually provide for your people. So what I want you to do, if you want to be influential and not a nuisance, an influence, not a nuisance, is I want you to continuously look at your content when you're planning and preparing it, and I want you to focus specifically on providing value. Make sure that you're listening to your people. You're understanding what their problems are. You're understanding where they're getting stuck up. Where are they getting caught in the weeds of it all? And I want you to provide solutions for that. And don't overstretch yourself. Don't try and solve problems that you're not an expert in. But look in your toolbox, look in your area of expertise and see if there are even baby steps you can provide as value for your people. When your people are stuck, they're not moving. Whatever you can do to help them get that momentum and keep that momentum going, that is what is going to be success for your podcast and for your movement and for you as an expert. Very simple things that you have to do. And if you want to know more about getting great guests on your show, about building a show that is influential, that's going to have that draw, then definitely check the links down below and join us for a live academy and live stream conversions. These programs are going to expedite your success, whether you're a podcaster, you're a coach, whether you stream on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube or Instagram, doesn't matter. We're about building communities, finding the right kinds of content that are going to attract our dream customers and effortlessly ascend them up our value ladders. So join us, links are all down below. And while you're waiting, check out this video. You're gonna wanna watch it. All right guys, I will see you in our next one. Remember, I love you, be excellent to each other.